Hello cruel world, my name is Dr Sohom. I'm a consultant forensic psychiatrist. I assess mentally disordered offenders for a living so that you don't have to. You can call me the ominous Sohominous. As we're in spooky season and Halloween is right around the corner, I wanted to dive into the twisted case of Richard Delmer Boyer, a man who claimed a horror movie made him commit double homicide. So can a movie really push somebody to kill? Or is this just a convenient excuse for a cold-blooded murder? So this is exactly the kind of case that I would assess when I give evidence in trials as an expert witness. So let's get into some of the details of the brutal double homicide, which was December 7th, 1982. And this occurred in Fullerton in California. A horrific scene unfolded at the home of Francis and Eileen Harbitz. The elderly couple, both in their 60s, were found brutally murdered. Francis had been stabbed 24 times, while Eileen suffered 19 stab wounds. The level of violence was shocking, even to seasoned investigators. The killer, Richard Delmer Boyer, claimed he was under the influence of cocaine, marijuana and alcohol when he committed the murders. Boyer insisted that he was so intoxicated he couldn't distinguish between reality and the plot of Halloween 2. I wouldn't say it was common, but I've definitely had a few cases in my career where an individual with psychosis has believed that they're actually living in a film. So oddly, one particular film has come up on 3 different occasions in 3 different cases, and there's kind of a connection between this film and the concept of questioning reality. So my Psych for Sore guys, can you guess what that film is? I will let you know the answer later on in this episode. So Boyer's claim raises some fascinating questions about the intersection of substance abuse, mental health, and media influence. Let's break down the crime scene a bit more. So the level of violence suggests a frenzied attack, possibly fueled by drugs or extreme emotional disturbances, and the multiple stab wounds would indicate a loss of control, which could align with Boyer's claim of being in this altered state. And another intriguing aspect of this case is Boyer's behaviour after the murders. So he didn't turn himself in immediately. Instead, he was arrested nearly a month later. So to me, this delay suggests some level of awareness and at least an attempt to evade justice, which doesn't also quite fit with his claim of complete dissociation. Now, I know what you're thinking, ominous Sohominous, are you saying that Boyer was faking it? Well, not necessarily. The human mind is obviously a complex beast, and the effects of substance abuse can be unpredictable. So what I'm saying is that it's possible that Boyer experienced a drug-induced psychosis that temporarily blurred the lines between reality and fiction. But then again, it's equally possible that he's using this as a convenient excuse to avoid responsibility for his actions. So to ascertain whether an individual actually was psychotic or not, so were they truly outside of reality, I don't just take their word for it, I also look at all the evidence. So specifically, I look at evidence about the past. So I look through medical notes, psychiatric reports, case papers, to see if there's a history of this kind of psychotic behavior, of this stepping out of reality, of having delusions, of having hallucinations. I've seen countless cases where childhood experiences shape future behavior, but Boyer's background, well, it's a complex tapestry of influences related to criminality. He wasn't the product of a broken home or severe abuse, factors we often associate with violent offenders. Instead, Boyer's childhood was relatively unremarkable. He grew up in a middle-class family, he attended regular schools, and even participated in sports. So what I'm saying is, on the surface, nothing screamed future killer. But despite this seemingly normal upbringing, Boyer struggled with substance abuse from a young age. By his teenage years, he was already experimenting with drugs and with alcohol. So this early exposure to mind-altering substances could have played a crucial role in shaping his later behaviour. Boyer's education and work history also provides some intriguing clues. So he dropped out of high school, suggesting difficulties with authority or with structured environments. His employment record was, let's say, checkered at best, with a series of short-lived jobs. So this pattern of instability could indicate underlying issues with impulse control or social adjustment, and again, could also indicate difficulties with authority. One aspect of Boyer's background that stands out to me is his apparent fascination with horror movies. So we know that he claimed Halloween 2 influenced his actions, but was this a one-off obsession, or was it part of a larger pattern? Now, as a psychiatrist, I've seen cases where individuals with certain personality traits can become overly immersed in fictional violence. It's not that the media directly causes violent behavior, but it can sometimes serve as a catalyst for those who are already predisposed to aggression. As we piece together Boyer's past, we're left with more questions than answers. Was his substance abuse a form of self-medicating for underlying mental health issues? Did his fascination with horror movies reflect a growing disconnect from reality? Or was the combination of drugs, domestic stress, and media influences a perfect storm that pushed him over the edge? So let's answer this question. The Halloween 2 defense, was it fact or fiction? There's no denying that media can affect our thoughts and emotions. We've all felt scared after watching a horror film. So how plausible is Boyer's defense? Well, it's important to consider the specifics of his case. Boyer wasn't just watching a movie, he was under the influence of cocaine, marijuana, and alcohol. So this cocktail of substances could certainly alter his perception of reality. But does that mean that the movie made him kill? So here's where it gets tricky. While substance-induced psychosis can cause hallucinations and delusions, it doesn't typically create entirely new behaviors. In other words, drugs might make somebody more likely to act on existing violent tendencies, but they're unlikely to turn a non-violent person into a killer overnight. Having said that, it's not impossible. So in my career, I've assessed a handful of cases where somebody has committed violent, intense acts due to drug-induced psychosis. So for example, on one occasion, I have seen somebody say that they believe that they're actually reliving the Terminator and they believe somebody was coming to get them in their psychotic, paranoid state. But I also said that there was one film that came up 3 separate times. Can you guess what it is? It is actually The Matrix. And this kind of makes sense to me because the fact that there's this like altered reality that is kind of secretive and hidden is very much in keeping with a general background paranoid sense of psychosis where things don't feel completely real. So what's the verdict on Boyer's Halloween 2 defense? If it's used by itself, it's unlikely to stand up to rigorous psychiatric scrutiny, but with the combination of substance abuse, potential underlying mental health issues, particularly psychosis, and personal circumstances, it's likely that this played a much more significant role in Boyer's actions than simply just watching a horror movie. So the Halloween 2 defense, while creative, doesn't hold up under psychiatric scrutiny unless the defense team can prove that it was actual psychosis. There's no direct causal link between watching violent media and committing violent acts. If there were, we'd all be in big trouble considering the popularity of crime dramas, action movies, true crime documentaries. Individuals with certain personality traits or mental health issues might be more susceptible to the influence of violent media. That's ultimately the take-home point here. Media creators are not directly responsible for the actions of disturbed individuals. However, I think it's fair to say that they do have a role to play in shaping our cultural attitudes towards violence. The way violence is portrayed, whether it's glorified or shown with realistic consequences, can impact how viewers perceive and process it. Some research suggests that media violence might actually have a cathartic effect for some people, allowing them to vicariously experience aggression without acting it out in real life. It's a controversial idea, but it highlights just how kind of complicated this issue really is. As for cases like Boyer's, well, they serve as a stark reminder that human behavior is incredibly complex. Blaming a single motive for a brutal crime is, well, it's just far too simplistic. Instead, we need to look at the whole picture: psychological factors, substance abuse, personal circumstances, and yes, media influences, to truly understand what drives someone to commit such horrific acts. So thank you everybody for watching. If you enjoy the video, please give it a thumbs up. And if there are any other true crime cases you'd like me to dissect, let me know in the comments section below. Bye for now.